What is up, my little Deinos? Vepsis here, your coach of the Helsinki Hydreigons, and we are finally here for the UBL Season 3 Finals Teambuilder versus OPJellicent and his team being the Toronto Leafstorms. And this is gonna be one heck of a challenge for myself to be able to overcome my opponent and be able to get a revenge from a week 2 battle, which was the first time that we got to play throughout the season. So this is gonna be a rematch from that time. And OPJellicent actually happened to be the first seed throughout the regular season, and we were the number 2 seed behind him. The only reason that he was able to be ahead of us in the standings was that we had unfortunately one more loss than him when he had a 8-2 record and we have a 7-3 record regards to win and losses. But if we just had a one less loss than we ordinarily had throughout the regular season, we would have by far surpassed him compared to our differential, but that wasn't the case. But it's perfectly fine, because in the end both of us are in the finals, and really the seeding only matters for your potential playoff matches in that regard. So hopefully here we can do something that we weren't able to do in the regular season. After having honestly a very close battle with OPJellicent, we only lost it like in 1-0 fashion, and even back then we were in the unfortunate side of things regards to RNC, because he had got a couple of crits, or at least one crit what I remember on my DyeItTight, which really forced my hand, and he also got a freeze on my Celebi, which also forced my hand to having to swap out to be able to clear that freeze versus a mana fee, which really put me in a back foot in that regard, which those kind of plays I couldn't really afford versus him. And in the end we weren't able to get the win over him. But hopefully this time around, I'm not hoping for luck for myself over my opponent, but I really hope we can have as clean as battle as possible. Ideally no meaningful hacks will be happening, because if that will happen, I do believe in my chances to beat OPJellicent, even though I feel like matchup wise on paper this is the hardest matchup for myself to prepare, considering also the coach is definitely one of the best coaches in this league, obviously, because he was able to make to the finals and was the number 1 seed in that regard. So like I said, this matchup is very hard for me, and primarily the reasons why I feel like this is a very tough matchup is that, one, he has mons like Mana Fee, primarily the Mana Fee in itself, which is a very strong balance breaker in Draft League format, and it just happens to have a very strong matchup versus my defensive core, which already in itself that he has it over there, and he knows that it's his best mon, and he brought it versus me, and I expect it to come yet again. That already forces my hand that I cannot really bring a defensive team, because that would eventually, even though I could bring a solid defensive core to check Megaladios, Cobalion, Crobat, Axelgor, and all the other threats that I could have potentially good weapons to deal with them defensively wise, and therefore leave them in a range so I can pick them up with my priority, I cannot afford to take that route, even though how much easier it would be able to deal with those kind of threats if I did, because the Mana Fiend itself can take advantage of them easily, and all he needs to do is to keep up the momentum or make a double, expect my defensive play to be a case for versus his other threats, and then he sets up a Tail Claw or a Sap or just one of those moves, and it's gonna be able to claim like 2 kills at that point, and then it's not really worth for me to bring that kind of team trying to check the other things when I know something like a Mana Fee can take so much advantage of them. So because of that, because of the fact that Crobat, for example, on his team, which outspeeds my Greninja and Mega Gallade, and more importantly is able to revenge kill Mega Gallade easily with a Brave Bird or with a Sea Brave Bird if I try to go for a bulk upset in itself. So because of those two mons especially, they combined coming into this matchup makes it very hard for me to prepare for. Besides the fact that also Megaladios in itself pressures already good amount of respect in itself, because it is one of the best Mega Evolutions in Draft League format. Weavile in itself can be a risky for me, even though I'm not bringing Alomomola, which I did brought it versus him last time and he didn't bring the Weavile. That thing can also be a potentially problem, because it is Weavile after all. Cobalion can be very annoying for me to deal with, even even last time when I had the defensive responses to it, it still was annoying for me to break through, and I still expect it to come, even though I do expect it to be some sort of a bulkier variant with stealth rocks or with a assault vest to deal with my Dragalsi and Diancie, because those two were my better mons versus him last time, and I do expect him to see it that way as well and expect me to bring both of them. So Cobalion itself is also very annoying because it is a stopgap to those mons that I really rely on throughout this matchup potentially with my game plans. And outside of that, he also has good defensive responses to my Mega Gallade, which one of them did show up in Bramble, which could still show up yet again, but now I'm more self-aware how I'm gonna be playing around it if it does, and that is one of the reasons that I do decide to bring Mega Gallade this time around, which I didn't do last time in itself. So he has a lot of different mons that I really have to worry about. One of the more primary cores that he has been utilizing throughout the playoff run, I actually can actually show you that I did take a heavily consideration how he has been building throughout the season, and I have a separate like a document folder here in my showdown there where I have every single team that he has built so far throughout the season. I have all the IVs correctly like he showed on his team builders, the items and everything, and below them I always have also the lead mode that he has been using throughout the season, and this took a lot of time from me, and I took good amount of time to watching all of his team builders and some of his battles. And the battles that I did take heavily to consider is that I watched more than twice actually were the battles versus me in week 2 and 2 of his playoff matches in itself, because those are the most accurate ones that I can expect how he's gonna be prepared versus me, because obviously one of them was versus me, and based on how he has been kind of praising the fact that he doesn't like to go too defensive in his playoff games, because he believes that offensive route is a lot better and somewhat safer, which I can understand his point from that, is that when you're going more offensive and you have speed control and you're not relying on bulky setup or bulky recovery moves, you are basically trying to avoid yourself to be hacked in that regard, and that's something that I expect him to do in that regard. This is, for example, I'm showing his round 1 team that he utilized versus SilverBeanie, and this is his semifinals builder as well. And a lot of these mons that he has brought to these games and what kind of sets he has been running, for the most part I could see him being the similar trend versus me, and that is something that I primarily had to take a focus on and respect that kind of mindset that he would be taking versus me, which in itself is risky, because if he changed it already a little bit, I had to adapt to it and kind of be proactive throughout the battle to figure out that if he does bring some bulkier mons, if they happen to be something like a Goregeist, Gramble, Hippowdon or anything like that, I would have to figure out myself out of the situation that, okay, how do I have to play around these things, and how do I pressure and weaken them down so that I see myself a winning condition. I have dedicated winning condition in my Diancie, but its role could change to be a wall breaker instead versus some of those bulkier things with the set that I'm running with it, if I see it being necessary. But ideally, how I'm hoping and banking on in this matchup that is very much against me, in my opinion on paper, is that I take the offensive route, I have a proactive plan, what I'm playing towards to, which is the Diancie sweep, and I go from there essentially, and not be too passive versus someone like him. And the way I started to build this team was immediately with my Choice Scout Scissor, and this might seem a very weird set to bring versus a team that has a Hippowdon, a Rotom Heat, Cobalion, even Manaphy to extend that can easily take hits from it and punish it and make it more so a liability in that sense. But I really felt like I needed to have some surprise factors on this in this regard, and some good speed control as well, which he might not see coming, because even though he has brought choice Scarfers in both of his semifinals and his round 1 matchup, I don't expect him to do that versus me, because he has a very good speed tiers versus my own team as it is, and I don't really have good choice Scarfers on paper from his point of view, I think. that he would have to respect in that regard, and try to bring a faster Scalper to counter them as a way of speed control over them. And because I also utilized Trick Room versus him in week 2, I feel like he's gonna be not really rely on that item in itself, and hopefully that's gonna be the case, because then I will ideally have some sort of speed control through my team that will be able to outspeed majority of the monsters. For example, my Scissor in itself should outspeed a Adamant Crobat speed creeping Greninja. The only things that I cannot outspeed with this set would be Weavile, which I do have super effective priority move to hit it hard, Axelgor, which doesn't like to take the bullet punch, or of a Jolly variant of Crobat. So in itself, it can be a nice way to have a speed control and a pivot for my team, especially something like a Mega Latios in itself cannot really touch me too hard, even though I'm not really bulk invested, unless he's gonna be packing Hidden Power Fire just for this thing, which he didn't do last time, because he did mention on his Teambuilder video, which I can see his point of view why he said it, that Scizor is not the really biggest threat on paper versus him, but this just happens to be showing the case of how hard this matchup can be, is where I have to bring a mon that doesn't have the ideal matchup, but I'm still utilizing it as a choice scout, because I do believe it has its merits to be a fast pivot around the Mega Latios, hit it hard with a U-turn, and depending on if I have already got some chip damage with, for example, from my Celebi's U-turn, I already kill it from that range as it is, and hopefully pick up a surprise kill. I still pack the priority in Bullet Punch, which can be very valuable versus offensive type of build from my opponent. I have the superpower to be able to kill a weakened down Cobalion if necessary. I can do a little bit more damage to Rotom Heat if necessary, and I can Oko a Zangoose as well if I predict the Protect right. Bring this thing in and then go for a superpower, as he would try to go for like a Fire Punch, for example, trying to think that I'm a Bandit variant or whatever would be the case. And then we also pack the Knockoff, and the Knockoff is there just to be a way to remove Rotom Heat's item, because that thing could also be like a bulky Choice Scout set, or of a reducing berry to my Greninja like the Pasho Berry, what he utilized on week 2. This can also remove Crobat's Choice Scout if he happens to still bring that, as I would take a hit from it, remove its Choice Scout, so my Rock Polished Diancie can outspeed it from there. So the Knockoff in itself is also very valuable move to have on this thing, if I'm able to eliminate the right mon's item in that sense. And for example, Manaphy, since he had a Rindo Berry on it last time, if I'm able to outspeed it, go for the Knockoff that ideally leaves it in a range, so that my Celebi can revenge kill it from Leaf Storm, because then he would not have the Rindo Berry. I did the proper chip to it, and then ideally, unless I get min rolled and he's very specially defensive while at it, then the Leaf Storm can revenge it. So in that regard, I feel like even though the Scizor doesn't have the greatest matchup, it has its niches to function in the role that I vision it to be. And one of the better roles and how it's gonna be pairing on this team is to lure in the Rotom Heat throughout the battle if possible, so my next member of the team can punish from that kind of play from his behalf, which is going to be my Drugalzi, which last time I brought it as a TheChoiceSpecs, which is still a very strong set versus him, but I decided to go with a Saltwaste set instead for 2 reasons. One, I do want to have a way to swap my moves so I don't rely on predictions per se versus him, which I feel like it's gonna be very hard for me to do and always lock myself into one of my stabs, because if he potentially brings Cobalion and Crample like he did last time, those two combined already makes it very hard for me to lock in myself into one of my moves in it. So even though it's more likely that Crample is not gonna switch into me and Cobalion will be more likely, it's still a thing that I would have to worry about in that sense. And I like the fact that I do pack the Assault Vest on this thing, because this is another mod that can help me dealing with the Manaphy, therefore that even +3 Ice Beam / Psychic will do 66% to me at maximum if it is a bulkier Tailclaw set and has a very minimal special attack investment on it, which allows this thing to actually beat it 1v1, combine with Slug Spawn into Draco Meteor if needed to, and I do pack this Slug Spawn over Sludge Wave just for the 30% of having the poison, because I didn't feel like I need the damage output, and the Focus Blast is there like last time as a last ditch effort move, and this is ideally going to be my lead into this matchup if I see the most likely 6 that I expected from him. There are 5 mons that I believe that are, from my point of view, that are locks versus me, which are the Megaladios, Manaphy, Cobalion, Crobat, and Rotom Heat. Those 5 mons are the ones that I heavily prepare for and what I heavily expect, because they did show up last time, and I believe there's a good reason why they did. And then it's up to for the last mon that what it's going to be in that regard. Either it's going to be Zangoose, what he used in semifinals for a similar role as a breaker, which there's always a decent chance that it comes, because my normal resist are Diancie and Scizor, which it can pack a proper coverage move to eliminate from them from the picture. It could be the Crample yet again as a defensive check to Mega Gallade. It could also be a Hippowdon, which could be more of a special defensive sponge to help dealing with my Diancie and my Dragalge, which is definitely a potential chance, but I'm banking because of the mindset that he has. Playing into playouts, he would not like to bring a more like a Hippowdon versus me, and the type of team that I used versus him last time should not really give him motivations to bring it. So while I do think it has its merits to come, I'm banking because of the way I used my team last time versus him and based on the mods that I brought, plus the fact that how he has been playing so far throughout his playoff run. I don't expect the Hippowdon to come, but it has its merits to come, and that can be very annoying mod for me to deal with. And the other mod besides those would be either Weavile or Axelgor. I don't expect the Gore guys to come, and the Axelgor would be the second least likely mod that I expected to come, and then probably the Zangoose would be third likeliest, and then the Hippowdon and the Weavile and the Cramble. I feel like one of those 3 would be filling the last spot on the team besides the first 5 that I thought would be locks versus me. So those kind of mons that I expect them to come, I really have to have a proactive plan to deal with them, and this is gonna be my dedicated lead to deal with a Rotom Heat lead, because I think Rotom Heat, if it shows up and when it's gonna be showing up, in my opinion, on this matchup, is gonna be very strong lead for himself, and that's a mon that he led me versus me last time as well, and this is gonna be taking advantage of them or of that thing, and then I can go for a strong Dragon Pulse on that thing. And when he's gonna be Volt Switching out, I'm expecting him to Volt Switch into Cobalion to be able to take my Dual Stab relatively well, go for Stealth Rocks or go for attack, and it's really important for me to weaken that Cobalion down, because it's one of his potential stopgaps for my Diancie. So Dragalge's role is to be that early game breaker or a mid game breaker paired with Scizor, and weakening down my winning conditions check that he has on his team, potentially to be brought and very likely to be brought. So my weakness policy Diancie can win in this matchup, and this is a set that I thought about versus him last time. Depending on the item was always something that is up in the air, but I decided back then that I wanted to try out the Trick Room route and see how he kind of prepares versus this kind of variant of Diancie on the week 2 battle. Off the chance we will be having a rematch in playoffs, and in the end I decided to go with the weakness policy with Dual Stab, Calm Mind and Rock Polish, and this thing in itself can win it for me, just like that. It's all about positioning, and it's all about weakening down and realizing for myself that what are the things that I need to weaken down and what range, so that this thing can win at +2. And the ideal and the premier things that I would try to set up on would be non-tail cloud up Manaphy or the Megaladios in itself with Earthquake, which he's gonna be packing that for my Alolamag and for my Diancie 100% for sure. And those are the premier ways for me to trigger that weakness policy, go for Rock Polish and go from there. Even if he sees this coming, that I have weakness policy, ideally I can position it to the point that he has no options, then trigger that weakness policy, because I do also have the Calm Mind. And the idea with Calm Mind is that after I get a Rock Polish, I can Calm Mind up versus a Mana Fee, even if he's a Tail Claw set, because if he's defensive Tail Claw set, after Stealth Rocks at +1 or at +2, I definitely take a share from it depending on the health in itself. And a lot of the bulk that I pack on this Diancie is there so that I can use this thing as a winning condition. Take as many super effective moves from as many moves as possible after the Stealth Rocks, because it's not supposed to come out into the field until I'm going for the game with it, or utilizing for that one time to break through his mons, so that my other members on my team that are still left can pick the rest of the weakened mons that Diancie was able to break through from, or left them in that range. So it's ideally and primarily seen as a winning condition, but it can also function as a breaker with the weakness policy and with the Calm Mind, because its dual stab hits everything on his team, either neutrally or super effectively, thanks to the fact that his Steel type does not resist Fairy, and his other Fairy resist are weak to its Rock stab. So this set is very strong versus him, and it's very important for me to execute it right for whatever role it's going to be in that regard. And then the fourth member of the team for this matchup is gonna be a mod that I did not bring versus him last time, and this was also very hard for me to decide its 4 moves, but these are the 4 moves that I decided to go with it, based on the fact that I expect my opponent to bring a offensive team instead of having a passive mons, and that is why I don't pack setup moves like Sword Dance or Bulk Up on it. And that is going to be my 4 attacks, Mega Gallade with Adamant Nature in itself. I pack a lot of speed on this thing, ideally so that all the mons that he's trying to speed creep as outspeeding max speed Timid Moltres, I do outspeed them by safe margin in itself, and I still have just a little bit of enough of bulk so I can live a +3 Surf from a defensive Mana Fee, and I can also live a +1 Dragon Claw from a max attack non-attack boosting nature Mega Latios, if that would be whatever the case he set versus me, so that I can finish it all with the combo moves of Ice Punch into the Shadow Sneak and function as a failsafe for that scenario. And it can also function as a failsafe versus a Mana Fee in itself, which is a bulky variant, because ideally how I vision this thing also be able to deal with the Mana Fee is that after Stealth Rocks, if it's at +3, I take the first hit from it, go for the Thunder Punch, do about 50% of my min rolls would be a little bit below that, and then I go for the Close Combat, which actually does more, and then I do like above 55% into 60% depending on his defensive bulk, and then those two moves combined to shot that thing, and I can go from there. And that's kind of primarily the role what I have for Mega Gallade. It is hard stopped by Hippowdon if that shows up, or the Cramble, which I cannot really touch too well. But one, again, like I've been mentioning, I'm banking on that he doesn't bring mons that rely on recovery moves like the Hippowdon itself. And if he does bring the Cramble like he did last time, I have my other members on my team that I can take advantage of his defensive play, like my Dragausa, which I can hard swap into if he tries to go into his Scramble, and then I punish from that and then go for my prediction from there. Or I go into something like a Celebi, fire off a huge Leaf Storm of Psychic if the Mega Latios is gone, for example, or anything that can resist its dual stab, and go from there. So that's kind of like what I need the Mega Gallade for. I need to bring it into this matchup, even though he has potential defensive responses to this kind of set, because I needed to be able to outspeed the Mana Fee, two-shot that thing, and OHKO as many things as possible from his offensive threats, because I really worry about his offensive threats the most. And I'm banking on the fact that the ways that I have dealing with his defensive mons, I have enough resources as it is, so I don't have to rely on setup from my Mega Gallade in itself. Like the Diancie, for example, ideally can fulfill that role if necessary. And then the fifth member of the team is going to be Scarfton, the Greninja, with the Dark Neum Sea this time around, running enough of bulk that it can live a actually it can live a neutral energy ball from a Mana Fee after Stealth Rocks with the HP and also the HP and the physical defense allows me to leave a adamant breakbird from a Crobat after Stealth Rocks, and then I can 2-shot it back with combine of Scald into Water Shuriken thanks to the turret. Even if I only get 2 hits of Shuriken, it should be a 2-shot to that thing. And then I pack the Darknium Sea on it, because I wanted to have as hardest hitting C move versus the Manaphy that doesn't worry about its potential reducing berry being the Rindo berry, like it happened to have on it last time in itself. And it provides me a way to OHKO as well the Mega Latios, which I thought was really important, and therefore providing me just a good way to be able to do a big damage on everything that is not resisting the Dark Stab that it's going for, like the Cobalion or Cramble in itself. And even if Cobalion happens to come in versus me, that's just another turn that it has to take a chip on me for one of my offensive threats, and leaving itself in a range of Diancie, because that's really the primary monster that I have to worry about weakening down from. The monster that I expect to show up, it's the Manaphy and it's the Cobalion from the big 5 that I expect, which I need to weaken down to my Diancie range. And Greninja with the Darknium Sea can potentially force already one of them to take that kind of hit, which is really important for me. And then I also pack enough speed investment to outspeed a max speed Adamant Crobat, because there's a very good chance he tries to go aggressive with the speed tier gaps. Well, not the speed tier gaps, but considering how I spade crit versus him last time, last time that I used Greninja, I did have enough speed investment to outspeed max speed Timid or Jolly Mega Latios in itself, considering that he would do that versus me as well, because I also have a Mega Evolution with the same speed tier. So that was the speed tier that I had last time, and off the chance he sees that being the case, he can afford to go Adamant Nature and still outspeed that kind of variant of Greninja. And off the chance he does, I want to outspeed that thing, because that's another mon that I would like to get weakened down or eliminate, and Darknium Sea can potentially do that after he's been taken out by a prior chip, either from my attacks or from a Brave Bird recall that he's forcing to take himself from, as he would be using that move the most versus me. So that's basically what's game plan with the Greninja in itself. I could have packed Grass Knot here and then gone with the Krasnium Sea, but yet again I didn't feel like the Krasnium Sea is as important, and I feel like the momentum options between these two and from my last one really helps me to position throughout the battle. And I think positioning and keeping up the offensive momentum is one of the primary ways for one of us to win this battle, and it can be the difference maker in that regard. So I want to have as many resources to momentum as I can potentially have with all of my mons that I'm gonna be bringing. And the last member of the team is gonna be Old Max Defense almost Celebi with Choice Scout with Psychic, Leaf Storm, U-Turn and Stealth Rocks. And this is a set, and this ideally will function as a way to lure a Crobat to stay in versus me, as I would be ideally having to force swap into it, as I would not like to leave any of my other mons in versus it potentially on that turn from a raw Brave Bird from the Crobat, and then try to think that I would be sacking it so I can eliminate it with my Psychic and go from there. Because after he takes a Brave Bird hit or recoil from that, it should be in a range of my Psychic, and also the special attack with the knockoff from the Scissor ideally would be allowing me to 2-hit KO a Manaphy set, unless it's just perfectly ideally IV wise in itself, and I happen to get like very low rolls in itself between the knockoff into Leaf Storm in itself. So it functions as an offensive check to Manaphy in that regard. It provides me a Stealth Rocket if I ever have happy to find a turn that I can afford to go for that, especially if something like a Mega Latios would be expected to come in. I still have a Scissor in the back to pivot into a very healthy Greninja. Then I can potentially find a turn to go for that, and then go from there and hopefully keep the rocks up on his side of the field, because a couple of his mons that I expect to come are weak to Stealth Rocks, and that can help me in a long run in that regard. But either way, it's going to be very hard battle for sure with this team, and considering the matchup and who I'm going up against. I also do happen to know now that one of the people that actually helps OPJellicent to build is Saso, and if you don't know who Saso is, he is arguably, well, for sure he is a top 2 draft league player of all time. He is the only guy that at his prime, if he would still be playing, would be right up there with DrSlaking, who is right now unquestionably the best draft league player right now and a builder in itself. So considering that he has someone like him helping out his team in itself, this is gonna be a very hard matchup for me to win because of that, and considering the matchup in itself is nowhere near in my favor, even though I have a couple of mons like Drogalsi and DyeItTight that he struggles with switching into, but because he has so much offensive presence to revenge kill them if they are not being outsped or I have a trick room up, it's still not an ideal situation for myself. But I have a very proactive team and an offensive team that I hope that can get the job done, and ideally the mons that he brings, I am the most prepared for those, which would be yet again Cobalion, Manaphy, Megaladios, Crobat and the Rotom Heat. If I see those 5 and then whatever the 6 mon is, that is the ideal situation that I go into this matchup, and then I have a very clear idea how I want to go from that. But if he changes it up a little bit, that's where he can get very or a little bit hairy depending on how he changes it from that. But I still feel like if he does that, I still should have enough juice to win, but I have to potentially change my mindset of if DyeItTight can actually still fulfill the winning condition role, or does it have to do something different and I have to intensify something else to be the winning condition. But that will be the team builder video for the finals in the UBL Season 3. I apologize if this is a very lengthy compared to my other team builders, but considering it's the finals, I really want to go in depth, really give you the proper analysis of the matchup, how I approach this battle, because this battle has team building wise already so many mind games going into it, and I have to get as many of them right as I approach this matchup, because it's going to be potentially the deciding factor which one of us is going to win. If I get this right, I can still be in a good position going to a matchup that I don't feel like is in my favor, but we are gonna have to see that tomorrow, as you're gonna be seeing that on Monday. Today being Sunday, where both me and OPJellicent will be uploading our team builders. Make sure to check out my opponent. He has ideally at this point already uploaded from his side the team builder, and tomorrow we'll be uploading our battles as well from the finals in itself. Stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you're new, leave a like if you enjoyed. Big shoutouts to SlackOut for doing the graphics yet again for this video and for the finals videos as well. But until then, thank you all for watching, and I'm gonna be seeing you guys later.